The door crashed shut, and her words slammed into me like a bolt out of the blue. "Dad's on his way with his Magnum, and you'd better hightail it outta here, 'cause you ain't making it through this," Sarah blurted out. My heart just froze up right there. How in the hell did she even know? My brain started spinning, and that confusion flipped into pure rage in a heartbeat. See, I'd always thought my wife, Lauren, was damn near perfect, loving, loyal, the whole package, or at least that's what I told myself. But now, it was all coming apart at the seams. My little girl had just dropped the bomb, Lauren had stabbed me in the back, and her lover, my freaking boss, was gunning for me. Everything I figured was rock solid in my life started splitting wide open. I staggered around the house like a drunk, those words looping in my skull over and over. This affair wasn't just some whispered gossip or a nagging hunch, it was real as hell, and the anger was creeping in, drowning out everything else. Could she really do something this low? I snatched up the phone, my shaky fingers fumbling as I punched in Lauren's number, dying to hear her voice and make some kinda sense of this mess. But there wasn't a single soothing lie left to cling to. The ugly truth was staring me down, and I had no choice but to face it head-on. She answered after the third ring, her tone so cool and flat it was like we were chatting about groceries. "So, you finally pieced it together, huh?" she said, casual as can be. "You should have seen it coming, but nope, that's your mess to own." Her words lit a fire in my chest. I couldn't wrap my head around what she was saying. The woman I'd swapped vows with, the mom to my kids, was owning up to her backstabbing like it was no big deal. And now, the guy who'd been in my life, running my company alongside me, was coming to take me out. I wasn't about to just sit there anymore. This wasn't only about saving my marriage, it was a war for my pride, for all I'd busted my ass to build, for everything I'd ever believed in. The rage boiling inside me was off the charts, and right then, something in me snapped. My whole world had flipped upside down, and I wasn't the same guy anymore. That call ended with a dead silence that stretched on forever, cold as ice. Lauren's voice kept ringing in my ears, every word cutting deeper than the last. "That's your mess to own," she'd tossed out, like I was the one to blame. How could I have been so damn blind, so clueless? The guy she picked was someone I'd trusted, busted my hump with day in and day out, my own boss. It made me wanna puke, but there was no dodging it anymore, it was all true. My heart was thumping so loud I could hear it as I tried to pull my thoughts together. What was my next move? Was I supposed to call her out, or was I already too far down the rabbit hole? Sarah's warning had hit me like a sucker punch, but now I had to deal with the cold, hard facts. The woman I'd built my whole life around had been feeding me lies for months, maybe even longer. I couldn't just stand there twiddling my thumbs. My hands shook as I grabbed my keys and bolted out the door. I didn't give a damn where I was headed, I just needed answers. The night air smacked me in the face, but it was nothing compared to the hurricane tearing me up inside. I peeled out toward our place, every mile dragging on like a lifetime. The kicker? I had no clue that, no matter what, I wasn't ready for what was coming. No amount of bracing myself could have armored me up for the showdown ahead. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a wrecking ball smashing through everything I thought was real. When I finally rolled up, I spotted her car sitting there, but she was nowhere in sight. My mind went into overdrive. Was she with him right now? Had they been sneaking around this whole time, chuckling at how easy it was to play me for a fool? Picturing Lauren, the woman I used to worship, wrapped up with some other guy turned my stomach inside out. I sucked in a deep breath, forcing myself to keep it together. I had to face her down. Stepping inside felt like walking into a stranger's house, our home didn't feel like mine anymore. Her perfume hung in the air, and it made me queasy. Every little thing, the furniture, the photos on the walls, screamed at me about the lie she'd been living. My fists balled up tight as I stormed through the place that I walked into the living room and there she was, Lauren, lounging on the couch, flipping through some magazine like the world hadn't just flipped upside down. She didn't even bother glancing up as I stepped inside. For a second, I just stood there, staring at her, feeling like some outsider in my own damn house. Then it all boiled over. I couldn't keep it in anymore. "Lauren, we've gotta hash this out," I said, my tone coming out icier than I'd planned. She lifted her eyes real slow, her face blank as a slate, like she'd been waiting for this showdown all along. "I know what brought you here," she tossed out, sounding like we were just shooting the breeze. I gawked at her, my head spinning. How could she sit there so cool and unbothered? "How long's this been going on?" I snapped, my voice cracking through the haze. "How long have you been at it? How could you stab me in the back like this?" Her answer hit me like a bucket of ice water. "Doesn't matter now. It's all out in the open. I'm tired of faking it, and you oughta be too." It stung like a backhand across the face, hearing her talk that way. Tired of faking it? Like I was the one spinning a web of lies? Fury roared up inside me. "You've been feeding me bull for months, Lauren. Sneaking around with him, my damn boss, and lying straight to Sarah's face, to mine, to everybody's." Lauren just rolled her eyes and let out this long, dramatic sigh. "Oh, come off it, you're no saint either. You were always tied up, always at work. Never even saw how miserable I was. Point the finger at me all you like, but truth is, you were checked out. Maybe if you'd opened your eyes, we wouldn't be here." Her words slammed into me like a fist to the stomach. Was she seriously twisting this around to pin it on me? Was I supposed to feel bad for busting my tail to keep a roof over our heads, to make sure we had everything we needed? The gall of her. I stepped closer, my voice quaking with anger. "You don't get to flip this script. You don't get to dump your mess in my lap. You chose to step out. You chose to lie. And now you're gonna deal with what comes next." She just chuckled, like it was all a big joke. "Deal with what? You think this is about payback? Give me a break. You've got no leverage to throw threats around anymore." I stumbled back a step, the weight of it crashing down harder than I'd braced for. She wasn't rattled. She wasn't sorry. She didn't give a damn about what she'd done. How'd I miss this for so long? "You think I'm just gonna roll over?" I barked, my temper flaring hot. "You think I'll let you stomp all over me like this?" Lauren's eyes narrowed, a spark of defiance glinting in them. "Go on, then. Bring it. But I'm not sticking around here, and I'm sure as hell not letting you drag me under. I've already picked my path." Her words cut deep, but something clicked inside me. This was the end of the line. No turning back now. I had to decide too. Was I gonna let her skate by, acting like she hadn't just torched our life together? Was I gonna let her waltz off while she smashed everything we'd built? Nah, I wasn't finished, not by a long shot. I had one last card to play. Right then, when she spat those words, something in me broke wide open. She stood there, cool as a cucumber, cold as stone, like her betrayal didn't even register on her radar. It was like I didn't even exist to her anymore. She'd tossed out everything we'd made together, everything I thought we were. I stood there glaring, my fists balled up tight, my jaw clenched so hard it hurt. The rage pumping through me was so thick I could barely suck in a breath. No remorse, no sorry, not a damn thing, just that empty stare. "You don't get to just strut off like this," I growled through gritted teeth, the words scraping out like a blood oath. I wasn't about to let her wreck it all and leave me picking up the pieces. My pulse was racing, my vision swimming with red-hot anger. Lauren smirked, brushing past me like I was nothing but air. "What are you gonna do about it, huh? You're too spineless to make a move," she sneered, her voice dripping with scorn that I couldn't wrap my head around what she was saying. Getting cheated on was bad enough, but having her spit insults in my face like that? That was a whole new level of low. I'd poured my heart and soul into this marriage, into her, and now she was acting like I was less than dirt. "Don't you dare talk to me that way," I growled, my voice turning to steel as I stepped toward her while she headed for the door. "You don't even know who you're screwing with here." Lauren spun around, her eyes narrowing into slits, daring me to make a move. "What's your plan, huh? Gonna bawl your eyes out? Little late for that, don't you think?" She edged closer, leaning in like she was the one holding all the cards. "Face it, you're done. Deal with it." Her cockiness was driving me up the wall. How could she strut around like she owned the place after all the crap she'd pulled? I wasn't about to stand there and let her trample me, not anymore. Something broke loose inside me, something wild and raw. I couldn't tell if it was the disrespect she was dishing out or the gut-wrenching sting of her betrayal, but I was through playing Mr. Nice Guy. I'd had it with being her doormat. "I ain't shedding tears, Lauren," I said, my voice dropping low and steady as a drum, "but I'm gonna make you wish you'd never crossed me." I don't even know where those words came from. It was like I'd turned into someone else, a guy shattered and pieced back together with pure fury. My brain was buzzing with ideas of how to hit back at her, at him, at this whole life she'd carved out by stepping on me. Then it clicked, a nasty little plan, small but sharp, and it was just what I needed. "I'm spilling it all to everybody," I declared, the words tasting like freedom and fear all mixed up. Lauren froze for a split second. She shot me a look, her face twitching just a bit, but then she let out this big, loud cackle. "Go for it," she scoffed. "They all know already. I don't give a damn. Nobody's buying your story, you look like the nutjob here. Everyone's seen you slaving away late, too wrapped up to catch on." That's when it slammed into me, she was right. She'd already laid the groundwork, sowing little doubts about me everywhere. Nobody'd take my side. But that didn't faze me. There were other ways to make her feel the hurt she'd dumped on me. I locked eyes with her, my stare colder than a winter night. "You're gonna wish you hadn't done this. All of it." She just flicked her hand at me like I was a pesky fly. "Sure, whatever. But it's finished." Then Lauren turned on her heel and strutted out the door, leaving me standing there, steaming mad and powerless. But I wasn't throwing in the towel, not yet. The next few days were a blur of anger and fog. I couldn't get my head straight for nothing. Work went to hell, I was short with everybody, and all I could think about was how she'd smashed my life to bits. But then it hit me, I remembered something that could make her pay. Lauren figured she could just skip off, ditch everything, and start fresh with her lover in some fairy tale world. But I had an ace up my sleeve, something she didn't see coming. I'd stumbled onto it while poking through her stuff. It wasn't just the cheating, there were weird money transfers, shady bank accounts, and fancy gifts that didn't add up. She'd been dipping into our joint cash to bankroll her little side gig. She thought she'd tucked it all away nice and neat, but she'd misjudged me big time. I knew exactly what I had to do. I'd lay it all bare, every lie, every filthy secret, every skeleton she thought she'd stashed away. This time, she wouldn't talk her way out of it. But I had to play it slick. Couldn't let her catch wind of my moves. I'd piece the proof together bit by bit, real careful like. It'd take a while, but man, it'd be worth it, watching her perfect little empire collapse, seeing her lose every damn thing she thought she'd secured. That'd be revenge, sweet and simple. For the first time in what seemed like ages, a little spark of satisfaction flickered in my chest. This wasn't just about settling scores with her, it was about taking my life back, grabbing hold of my pride again. I wanted her to see she couldn't just smash me to pieces and skip off without paying a price. Over the next couple of weeks, I kept my head down, piecing together every scrap of info I could find, double-checking every detail was locked in tight. And with every new tidbit I uncovered, my determination grew a little fiercer. Lauren figured she'd come out on top, but she didn't know this was only the warm-up. After she walked out, the days melted into a haze. I spent hours digging through the mess she'd left behind, trying to wrap my brain around it all. Anger, betrayal, flat-out disbelief, they swirled around one thing: Lauren. She'd done this to me, to our family, and now she was out there living like nothing had gone down. The nerve of it still lit a fire under me. But I wasn't gonna let her get the kick out of watching me crumble. I'd rise above that noise. I threw myself into work, keeping up appearances for the folks who still had my back. But when the doors were shut, I turned into a guy with a purpose. I'd collected enough dirt, enough little clues, to make Lauren wish she'd never crossed me. I knew her inside and out, every fib, every slip-up, every secret she thought she'd buried deep. Then everything shifted when Sarah reached out again. It was a Saturday morning, and I was nursing my coffee when the phone buzzed. Sarah's name popped up. "Dad, I can't even process this," she said, her voice heavy, cracking a little. "She's still with him." Not a call, not a text, she just ditched us. The hurt in her words slammed into me harder than I was ready for. Sarah was a wreck. It wasn't just the sting of Lauren's double cross, she was mad as hell, lost, spinning out. As her dad, I had to shield her. I had to prove we weren't gonna let this break us. "I hear you, kiddo," I said, fighting to keep my tone even, "but we're tougher than this. We'll pull through. You've got me, no matter what." Talking to Sarah lit a bigger fire under me to make Lauren answer for what she'd done. I was done with the charade. I'd drag her true colors out into the light for all to see. No more games, no more bull. The next week, I kept at it, piling up more evidence. I tailed Lauren, keeping my distance, watching her strut around with her lover like the world was still her playground. She was so damn smug, so full of herself. She didn't have a clue what I was cooking up. That's just how I liked it. I knew when the moment hit, I'd strike right where it'd sting most: her precious image, those high society pals she'd spent years cozying up to, the crowd she loved showing off for. They'd all get the real story. This wasn't only about payback, it was about hammering home how bad she'd screwed up. Then, just when I thought the mess couldn't get thicker, a curveball landed in my lap. Weird stuff started popping up at work. I'd been grinding, keeping things on track, but out of nowhere, I caught hushed chatter behind my back, sneaky glances when I walked in. Something wasn't right. I didn't have hard proof, but I could feel it. My blowout with Lauren was bleeding into the job. The whispers, the quiet side-eyes, it was all starting to pile up that I couldn't pin down if it was the affair itself or the way I'd been carrying myself since the truth hit me. My head was so wrapped up in the chaos at home that it must have bled into my job. I'd always been a sharp, on-point kinda guy, but the knot in my gut and the sting of being double-crossed had worn me down. Lately, it felt like eyes were on me everywhere I turned, and I started wondering if Lauren had somehow turned my boss against me. Was he clued into my personal mess and using it to twist the knife? The thought churned my stomach, but it wasn't just a hunch anymore, it was too real to brush off. I had to dig for the truth. I needed to figure out if my boss was tangled up in more than just stealing my wife. Was he the puppet master behind this whole disaster? Could he be why Lauren had gone off the deep end? The office turned into a war zone. I kept my cool, played the part, but something was gnawing at me from the inside. The pressure was crushing. Then my phone rang, a private investigator I'd hired a few days back. What he laid out next froze the blood in my veins. "It's uglier than you figured," he said, his tone hushed and grim. "Your boss is neck-deep in this mess. I've got video, texts, the works. It's not just the affair, there's bigger stuff at play here, stuff you'd rather not know." A sick wave rolled over me. How had it spiraled this far? How'd I miss every damn clue? I couldn't sit still anymore, I had to move. I'd face my boss, call out Lauren, and blow the lid off everything. No more watching from the sidelines while they tore me apart. I started plotting, lining up every piece for the big reckoning. I wasn't leaving a single thing to luck. Lauren and my boss weren't slipping through this, not on my watch. Day by day, my head cleared up. Revenge was coming, but it wouldn't be some hot-headed stunt. Nah, this was gonna be cold, precise, like a chess game they'd never see coming. One thing was dead certain: when the dust settled, nothing'd look the same. The more I chewed on what I'd learned, the fiercer I got. This wasn't just a two-timing wife anymore, it was a full-on setup, deeper and darker than I'd ever guessed. It went beyond Lauren's backstabbing, it was my whole life getting ripped apart by people I'd trusted. My boss, the guy who'd guided me, who I'd shared beers and late nights with, was in on it. He'd fueled Lauren's nerve to ditch our marriage, to shred it to pieces. Looking back, those little shifts in my world started screaming at me, stuff I'd shrugged off as no big deal and now lit up like neon signs. The way Lauren pulled away out of nowhere, those late-night work sessions, the flimsy excuses, it all tied back to him. The investigator dumped it all in my lap: pics, chats, paper trails. It was a gut punch. Lauren had been siphoning company cash to bankroll her fling with my boss. They'd been sneaking around, scheming to wreck our family, and I'd been too dumb to catch on. Worst of all, my boss was loving every second of it. He thought his clout would let him skate by, that he could bury me without a soul blinking. I needed a rock-solid plan, one that'd make them both squirm. Just outing them wasn't enough, I had to make it sting, make them feel the wreckage they'd left in my life, in my kid's life. Over the next few days, I got my ducks in a row: the proof, the texts, the hard evidence that'd sink them both. I wasn't ready to face Lauren yet, though. I had to stack the deck in my favor first, make sure every card was mine before I went in swinging. I wanted her to feel the full crash of what she'd done. I'd shatter her the same way she'd shattered me. That I hit up some old buddies, folks I hadn't talked to in forever, guys who still owed me a solid or two. If I was gonna take down my boss, I needed some serious ammo, and I was damn well gonna get it. I wanted him cornered, sweating, with no way to squirm free. Picturing him losing it all, everything he'd built, kept my fire burning. But this wasn't just about sticking it to them anymore, it was about grabbing the reins of my life again. They'd ripped everything out from under me, and I was about to show them what happens when you poke the wrong bear. Time dragged on, and every move I made felt heavy: the secret, the scheme, the constant need to keep it under wraps. But I wasn't backing down. No way was I letting them come out on top, not after all they'd done, all they'd snatched away. I decided to bide my time, waiting for the perfect shot to nail them when they'd least see it coming. Confronting Lauren or my boss right then wasn't the play. I had to lock down evidence so tight they couldn't wiggle out, couldn't dodge the fallout of their own mess. Then, one night, the stars aligned just right. It was late, way too late for anybody normal to still be at the office, but I knew my boss would be there. He was always the last guy out. That was my golden ticket, the chance I'd been holding out for. I peeled out to the office, my pulse hammering, my head razor sharp. Pulling into the lot, I spotted his car. Yep, he was still at it, or so he thought. What he didn't know was I'd already slipped inside, lying in wait. I'd stashed the proof in his office earlier, the texts, the receipts, the whole damn pile. Once I faced him down, he'd have no outs, no way to bullshit his way free. He'd be pinned, staring down the barrel of the truth. And when he realized the jig was up, that's when the real party would kick off. I hung back in the dark, eyes locked on him as he strolled into the building. He didn't have a clue what was coming. I watched him saunter into his office, that same smug little kingdom where he thought he was untouchable, where he'd schemed behind my back, chuckling at how easy it was to torch my marriage. The plan was straightforward: I'd step up, slap all the evidence on the table, and let him watch his world cave in, everything he'd worked for, everything he'd stolen from me, crashing down in flames. No room for excuses, no slick talk to save him. He was gonna feel the burn. I sucked in a deep breath, bracing myself for the showdown. My heart was thumping like a drum, but my mind was crystal clear. This was it, the moment I'd been itching for. I headed toward his office, and before I even tapped the door, I caught his voice through the wall, laughing it up on the phone. He was cracking jokes, totally clueless about the storm about to roll in. I steadied myself with another breath, shoved the door open, and stepped inside. The hinges squeaked as I crossed the threshold, my boots clicking on the shiny floor. There he was, my boss, yapping away on the phone, chuckling like life was one big comedy show while I stood there, still as stone for just a heartbeat. But that freeze didn't last long. This was the tipping point, where it all flipped. I didn't give a damn that he was mid-call. His cocky stance, that self-assured swagger, didn't faze me anymore. I was through sitting back, through eating whatever they dished out. It was my turn to call the shots, Tom, I said, keeping my voice steady but sharp as a blade. He didn't even glance up at first. Yeah, talk to you later, he mumbled into the phone before hanging up. The quiet that settled between us felt like a chokehold. When he finally lifted his eyes, a cocky grin spread across his face, but it wobbled the second he locked onto mine. Something in my stare threw him off, just for a beat, though he tried to play it cool, leaning back in his chair like he still owned the room. What's eating you tonight, huh? You look a little rough around the edges, he tossed out, aiming for casual. But I caught that twitch of nerves behind his smirk. There it was, the first chip in his shield. I've got your number, Tom, I said, cool as ice, stepping up and slapping the folder down on his desk. You and Lauren, I know it all. Every last bit. His face flickered from calm to puzzled, then landed hard on worried. He leaned in a touch, squinting at me. What are you yammering about? I didn't bother with a straight answer. Instead, I slid out the first piece of the puzzle, texts between him and Lauren, receipts from their little dinners, the hidden accounts. One by one, I laid them out, watching the color drain from his mug with every sheet that hit the wood. You figured I'd stay in the dark forever, I went on, my tone turning frigid with each word. Thought I'd never catch wind, never put it together. Well, here we are, and you're out of moves. Tom sat there, mute for what felt like forever, his eyes bouncing between the papers and me, scrambling for some kind of spin. The silence was so heavy it drowned out anything he might have tried to say. When he finally opened his mouth, that usual swagger in his voice was gone. Listen, man, I didn't plan for this to blow up. It kinda happened, you know? Save it, I snapped, shutting him down cold. Don't even try to weasel out of this. You've already trashed enough. His expression crumpled. He knew his smooth talking wasn't gonna cut it this time. The guy who'd always acted like he was bulletproof, like he ran the show, was finally on the hook. You're done for, I pressed on. Your gig, your good name, your whole damn career, it's toast. You ain't skating by on this one. His hand started trembling. I could see the gears grinding in his head, hunting for a lifeline, but he was coming up empty. He'd been so damn sure nobody'd ever catch on, that he was above it all. Now, there was no back door. I didn't mean for it to get this crazy, he stammered, his voice cracking like thin ice. I figured it'd just be a quick thing, you know? But Lauren, she's something else, his words tripped over themselves, fading into nothing. I didn't give a damn about his sob story. You grabbed what wasn't yours to take, and now you're gonna cough up the price, I said, leaning in close so he'd feel the weight of it. This is just step one, Tom. I'm making sure everybody hears, every single soul. No hole deep enough for you to crawl into. No more chummy lunches, no more snickering at my expense. I'm tearing you down. The spark in his eyes dimmed. That cocky edge, the smug grin, it all melted away. All that was left was panic. He could sense the avalanche coming, and he knew he couldn't stop it. "Please," he croaked, his voice dropping low, "you don't gotta do this. I'll patch it up. I'll talk to Lauren, set it straight. Just, gimme a shot, man." But I was past hearing him out. The guy I'd looked up to for years was just a sniveling punk now, groveling for a break. I wasn't handing him squat. "No dice," I said, my tone hard as stone. "You've had your shots, Tom, and you've pissed away every last one." I spun on my heel and headed for the door, leaving Tom behind me, the weight of what I'd just pulled off sinking deep into my bones. This wasn't some childish grudge, this was me clawing my life back. It was about proving nobody, not a soul, gets to dodge the fallout of their dirt. As I hit the doorway, his voice cracked through the air, "Wait. Don't do this, please. Don't tank me." I didn't glance back. No need to see the panic swimming in his eyes, I was through with him. "You tanked yourself," I shot back, then stepped out, the door banging shut behind me like a gavel dropping on everything that just went down. The next few days felt like a dream I couldn't wake up from. I'd faced Tom, laid him bare, and watched the guy who'd once shown me the ropes turn into a nobody right in front of me. But that wasn't the endgame. The real payoff, the real thrill, was still ahead when I'd swing my focus to Lauren. She was the spark that lit this whole fire. She'd made the call to stab me in the back, to rip our family to shreds. Hooking up with Tom was the last nail in the coffin, but the lies, the two-faced games, the puppet strings, she'd been pulling those from the jump. I'd been stacking up proof for weeks, tracking her every step, and now I was locked and loaded. I had everything I needed to torch her world, to make her answer for the wreckage she'd caused. But Lauren wasn't gonna be a pushover like Tom. She'd been scheming this out forever, she was braced for a fight and ready to claw back with all she had. Thing is, I wasn't shaking in my boots anymore. I wasn't the guy who just rolled over. I'd shed that skin, I wasn't letting my wife stomp me into the dirt no more. Now, I was the one calling the shots. The phone jolted me awake in the dead of night. Sarah's name flashed on the screen. "Dad," she said, her voice wobbly, "Mom's acting so off. She's playing like she's the one who's been wronged. Keeps saying you don't get it, that you're the one screwing everything up. Doesn't even care that you're torn up, she acts like it's all good." I shut my eyes, a hot surge of rage bubbling up. Lauren always had a knack for twisting folks around her finger, but hearing Sarah spill this lit a fuse in me. Same old playbook, spinning lies, flipping the script, acting the martyr. "Hang on, Sarah," I said, keeping my tone steady but solid as a rock. "Your mom picked her road. She built this mess, and now she's gotta sleep in it. You don't owe her your shield. You don't have to swallow her garbage. She's the one who blew it all apart." Sarah went quiet for a sec, and I could hear her fighting back tears on the line. "I just don't understand, Dad. How could she pull this? How could she ditch us like that? Ain't your burden, kid," I said, softening my voice. "She chose this path, and now she's gotta deal with what's coming." The call wrapped up, and I sat there in the dark, a storm of anger, grief, and an odd kind of peace swirling in me. I'd spent years holding it all together, patching up cracks, bending over backwards to keep Lauren happy. But now it was plain as day, she didn't want saving. She didn't give a damn. She'd made her move, and I was done battling for a marriage that was already busted beyond fixing. Come morning, I cruised over to Lauren's place. I didn't have a script ready. Didn't even know if words still mattered. But I had to face her, this one last time. And this round, I wasn't letting her twist me up. No way was she flipping this back on me. I rapped on the door, my heart thumping hard. When she swung it open, her face flashed surprise at seeing me there, but it quick shifted to that stubborn, hard-edged look. She wasn't backing off. She wasn't showing a crack. What are you here for? She snapped, her voice sharp as a winter wind. The truth, I shot back, stepping into her space. I wanna know why'd you pull this? She folded her arms tight across her chest, eyeing me like I was some drifter she didn't recognize. What's left to spell out, John? You were never around. Work had you hooked, and you didn't give a damn about me. I didn't wreck this, you did. Fury bubbled up in me, but I clamped it down hard. No way was I letting her rattle me. You're the one who stepped out. You're the one who stabbed me in the back. And now you're gonna flip it on me? I handed you everything, Lauren, everything, and you just chucked it in the trash. Her laugh cut through the air, bitter as old coffee. You never got it. Never saw me for real. You were too busy playing king of your perfect little castle to notice I was choking. Think this is all about you? Wrong, it's about me. Her words hit like a sucker punch. She was so wrapped up in her own high and mighty bubble, blind to the mess she'd made, that it set my blood on fire. She'd been dancing through some fairy tale, and I was about to rip the curtain down. I'm wise to Tom, I said, keeping my eyes locked on hers. The texts, the receipts, the secret cash, I've got it all in black and white. Her eyes popped wide, and for a split second, I caught a flash of panic. But she quick-slapped a smirk over it. Big deal. You think that's gonna spook me? You think this changes squat? I'm letting everybody in on it, I said, my voice steady as a steel beam. I'm gonna watch your cozy little setup crash and burn. And when it does, you'll be the one picking through the ashes alone. She stood there, arms still crossed, trying to play it cool, but I could see the hairline fracture spidering through her tough act. I had her pinned. She knew it, and I damn well did too. You can't pull this off, she said, her voice quivering just a touch. You can't trash me. That ain't who you are. I ain't trashing you, Lauren, I replied, my tone icy and hard. You've already trashed yourself. I'm just making sure the world gets the memo. With that, I turned and strode out of her place, leaving her rooted there, her whole game falling apart around her. The days after that face-off were a whirlwind of mixed-up feelings, each one messier than the last. Lauren's smug grin, that shield she thought would hold, stuck in my head like a bad tune. But this wasn't just her show anymore. It wasn't only about her double cross. It was about me, about snagging back my pride and steering the wheel of a life shredded by her lies. I'd already made up my mind. I'd walked away from her, from the marriage, from every dream I'd clung to. No backtracking now. Facing her down was a must, but the heavy lifting was just kicking off. She wasn't gonna waltz away from this disaster she'd cooked up without eating the fallout. Stepping away from her apartment, a load slid off my shoulders. I'd done it, I'd thrown it all in her face. Showed her the cards I'd been holding. But it didn't feel like enough, not yet. I needed her to carry the scars of what she'd done to me, to us, forever. Over the next few days, I got to work, cranking my plan into gear. Every shred of dirt I'd dug up, every message, every shady bank move, every fib, I polished it up, ready to roll. It'd take some time, sure, but Lauren couldn't hide in the shadows forever. That shiny little kingdom she'd built on betrayal and bull? I'd make sure it crumbled right before her eyes. It wasn't just about tanking her good name, it was about hammering home how bad she'd hurt us. I didn't want to play small or sink to her level. My goal was to shove the truth in her face, make her feel the gut-deep damage she'd dealt not just to me, but to our kids, our whole family. As the days rolled by, I kept my distance from everybody. I steered clear of the office, dodging the hushed chatter and sideways looks I knew were waiting. But the clock had ticked down, it was time to rip the mask off, to let the world see Lauren for real, to show the woman behind the curtain. I kicked it off with my boss. Tom had already taken a dive, but I wasn't finished with him yet. I dug up every slimy detail, creepy emails, backroom deals, every time he'd flexed his clout for the wrong reasons, and fired it off to the folks who could bury him. He wasn't just losing his desk, he was losing it all, everything he'd clung to. Then came Lauren's turn. I didn't just spill the beans, I laid out the proof. I made damn sure people didn't just hear it, they saw her for the selfish wrecking ball she was, tearing down everything for her own kicks. Consequences for her? Didn't care. She'd never given a rip about me, our kids, or the life we'd built. Why should I lose sleep over her now? Even as I pushed the plan forward, though, a weird hollow spot gnawed at me. I'd come out on top, right? I'd unmasked them both, snatched back the reins, and proved they couldn't skip off scot-free. So why'd it feel so empty? Truth is, revenge didn't patch me up like I'd hoped. It didn't wipe out the ache. It didn't erase the years I'd poured into trusting someone who didn't deserve a drop. It didn't hand me back the life I'd lost. But it did something else, it cut the cord. It set me free to finally drop the baggage. Lauren's world imploded, just like I'd figured it would. Her buddies bailed on her. Folks started poking holes in everything she'd ever said. She scrambled to glue the pieces back, but it was too late, her lies didn't hold water anymore. Her shiny rep was shredded, and I couldn't have been happier with the view. Tom got his too, booted from his job, his career a smoking wreck. It was the payoff I'd chased, the prize I'd busted my hump for. They both got slammed for what they'd done to me, to my family. Sitting back, watching it all play out, hit me with a realization. Revenge didn't bring me calm waters. It didn't fix the cracks. What it gave me was something I'd been missing, control. The wild ride of the last few months, anger, heartbreak, shock, had drained me dry. But one thing I knew now. I was tougher than ever. I'd been smashed flat, but I'd clawed my way back up, brick by brick, and I was ready to step forward. Lauren might have torched our marriage, but she didn't take me down with it. This whole mess taught me something real. Strength ain't about clinging to yesterday or waiting for a fix-it fairy. It's about grabbing the wheel, cutting loose what's dead weight, and moving on. I looked at my kids, and for the first time in forever, a spark of hope flickered. They'd been through the ringer, felt the sting of betrayal right alongside me, but now we could rebuild, tighter, stronger than before. And Lauren? She'd picked her path. She'd lived in her bubble of bull, and now she was footing the bill. I didn't need her anymore, no apologies, no excuses. I'd figured out how to roll without her. The last thing I learned hit hard: betrayal can knock you down, but it also toughens you up. You don't have to stay busted. You can stand tall, rebuild, and come out meaner on the other side.